Could I get maybe some thumbs up from people to make sure that everybody can see this? Got thumbs up. People are seeing it. All right. We get someone getting in here. Thumbs up. We can see it. And I hope everybody can hear me okay as well. Okay, a couple things before we start the presentation, a couple things to note. We've already asked you to put some personal info in the chat so we can take a look at that, see where you're joining in from. One note is that this meeting is being recorded. So if you're comfortable being on camera and sharing your video, we would really appreciate that. I like to see lots of faces while I'm presenting. But if you're not comfortable sharing your video, that is no problem at all. As we go through the presentation, we will have a Q&A section at the end, but as we're going through the presentation, if you think of something, please put your question in the chat. One of our other volunteers, Melissa, will be keeping an eye on that, and she'll be answering those questions as they come in. And then if you have questions at the end that have not been answered yet, feel free to ask them at the end. So we're going to save open questions towards the end, but if you have a question as we're going through, please put it in the chat, and Melissa will try to get to it. I think those are all the things I needed to note before the presentation, so now we can get into it. Thank you all so much for being here this evening. This is our first virtual town hall, but is part of our 40 and 40 town hall series for Rank My Vote, where we are going to, our organization, Rank My Vote, is going to 40 cities in 40 days to educate voters about the benefits of ranked choice voting and informing people about our campaign to codify ranked choice voting in the state of Michigan via a citizen-led ballot initiative, a state constitutional amendment via a ballot initiative in 2026. And then we're going to tell you all about ranked choice voting and how you can get involved if you're interested in being a part of this exciting and growing movement. And there we go. Well, a little bit about me before we get into the meat of the presentation. My name is Christian Potts. I'm Rank My Vote's Speakers Bureau Director. So I kind of lead our presentation team and our speakers team. And so we plan this 40 and 40 Town Hall series, and we created this presentation that you're seeing now that was massively in part to one of our other volunteers, Melissa, who's on here tonight. She did a ton of great work putting this presentation together. So that's our team, and that's what we do. I'm a sophomore at the University of Michigan. Studying political science. And you can see in that picture in the bottom left corner, me giving a presentation to my political science class last year on ranked choice voting. That's really when I got interested in this topic. I had this massive presentation, this massive project I had to do for my political science class, and my professor happened to be a former volunteer for Rank My Vote. That's Professor Lisa Dish. So she was super knowledgeable. She was able to work with me throughout the semester and really helped me see that a lot of the issues in politics today are systemic issues. They're issues with the way that we conduct our elections today. And so I went into it not knowing a whole lot about electoral reform and about ranked choice voting, and I came out of it its strongest supporter. I could not be more enthusiastic about change in our electoral process and more excited to be involved with Rank My Vote. So before, again, we get into the meat of the presentation, take a look at this political cartoon. I think this kind of summarizes perfectly how everybody feels about politics today and how we want to deal with politics, how stressful it all seems as we get into election season. I think we feel this especially strongly. We're all getting bombarded by mailers and texts and phone calls, and you're getting texts from Nancy Pelosi asking you to give $20 to save democracy, or Donald Trump Jr. asking you to buy the Donald Trump memorabilia coin. And it's just constant and it's divisive and it just feels so stressful and overwhelming, especially as we get so close to the election. And you might want to just go to the pharmacy and get this big bottle of anti-anxiety medication. But what we're here to tell you today is that there are institutional, systemic reforms that can fix so many of the problems that we see in politics today. So last year, there was a Pew Research study. They asked Americans to describe politics in one word. The bigger the circle, the more common the response was. And one thing you'll notice if you take a look at this is that there's not a single word with a positive connotation up there. We see divisive getting the most responses, corrupt, polarized, messy, dysfunctional, bad, one word that I'm not going to say on recording. And nobody has a good, when they're asked to provide one word to describe politics, nobody feels good about where we're at. So we need to do something about politics today. We're going to talk about the problem and we're going to talk about solutions. So we're going to spend about 15 minutes on the problem, what I mean by the problem and what I mean by our current system. We're going to talk about our solution, what we think is the solution to so many of the problems we see today, and that's ranked choice voting. And we're going to talk about how we're going to implement ranked choice voting and what our plan is to get it in Michigan. Then we're going to have a chance to get your guys' input and questions if they haven't already been answered. And then I'm going to make my big ask to all of you this evening, which is to get involved with us. There are so many ways to get involved. This is an exciting and growing movement, and we need all hands on deck. So, very basically, what do I mean when I talk about our system? When I say our current system is broken, what do I mean by that? When I say our system, I'm referring to the current way that we conduct our elections, and that is plurality voting. Plurality voting is maybe the simplest way of conducting elections. It's how it's conducted in pretty much every place across the United States today. When you go to the ballot box, you have all the candidates on a piece of paper, and you choose the candidate that you want to win. And then the candidate that gets the most votes wins. It's the easiest voting method to explain. It seems very intuitive, and it's used extremely broadly, at least in this country. But what we want to tell you today is that this system actually produces some really negative externalities. And so a lot of people, when they look at politics, when they look at how broken things are right now, how divisive, corrupt, and bad things are right now, they look at specific politicians or specific political parties, and they say that those politicians are particularly bad. They are corrupt. They are evil. They are divisive. But when people are doing that, all they're really looking at are the behaviors. They're looking at flawed behaviors. Now, behaviors, there are bad politicians. There are people who act badly because they are bad people, sure. But you have to look deeper than that. Why are politicians or political parties or lobbyists or super PACs, why are these groups and individuals acting poorly? It's because there are incentives to do so. And those incentives are created by a flawed system. Plurality voting is that flawed system that we need to change. We need systemic institutional change. And we're going to talk about right now why exactly plurality voting is so bad. So, looking very basically at some outcomes that we get from plurality voting, the current way that we conduct our elections. If you look at this very simple graphic, we have, let's say, an election between two candidates. One of them is from the Orange Party and one of them is from the Purple Party. Now, since this is a two-candidate race, the winner is guaranteed to have majority support, right? Just by virtue of there being only two candidates in the race. And we see in this instance that the candidate from the Purple Party is getting 70% of the vote. 70% of people align with the Purple Party. And so this makes sense, right? The person who is in the majority wins the election. And Orange getting 30% has essentially should not be winning the election, right? Now, what happens if this becomes a congested election? What if the Purple Party is not made up of just one candidate, but three of them? In this case, because there are three candidates in the Purple Party, they're splitting that party's vote, allowing a non-majoritarian candidate to win the election. With plurality voting, all you need are the most votes to win. You don't need any particular number. You don't need any particular percentage. You can win with any percentage. You could win with 30%. You could win with 20, 10. You can win with any percentage with plurality voting. And we see the negative externality of that here. When the purple party vote is split, when the majority favorable party vote is split among several candidates, we can see a non-majoritarian candidate win. In fact, a candidate that is disapproved of by 70% of the voting population. So majorities get split with plurality voting. And looking further at split majorities, if we stopped the election right here, if we just took the current polling data from Michigan, this is what it would look like. We have Kamala 46, Trump 44, and then the rest of the votes split amongst a couple third-party candidates. Now, what I want you to notice from this graphic and a couple that I'll show you in a second is that we don't know where the majority lies in this election. Are they to the left of the political spectrum, to the right, somewhere in the middle? We don't know because the winner, in this case, Kamala Harris getting Michigan's electoral votes, is winning without a majority. Looking at a couple more famous examples of this, looking at 1992, the presidential election, we had Ross Perot, Reform Party candidate, libertarian-leaning guy, getting 19% of the popular vote in that election. So again, what's to notice from this is that the winner is winning an election with far less than majority support. Bill Clinton with only 43%. Maybe the most famous example of a non-majoritarian candidate winning, and the most famous example of what's called the spoiler effect, which I'll explain in a second, is the 2000 presidential election, which was largely between George W. Bush and Al Gore. But this is sort of a famous example because of Ralph Nader, who was in the Green Party. What you're looking at here are the results from Florida, which is where the election was ultimately decided. Now, a lot of people look at Ralph Nader and they call him a spoiler. They say because he's in the Green Party, he was drawing votes away from would-be Democratic voters because they're both parties are to the left of the political spectrum. So people point at Ralph Nader and they say he spoiled the election for Al Gore, handing the election to George W. Bush. But if you look at this chart a little bit more closely, you'll see that every single third party candidate in this race, and there were numerous of them, all of them got more votes in Florida than the difference between George W. Bush and Al Gore. They all got more than 537 votes, which makes every single third party candidate in this race a spoiler. And again, what is to take away from that is that third party candidates can be spoilers. They can draw votes away from their most ideologically similar opponent. And what's also to take away from this is that no candidate got a majority in Florida, where that presidential election was ultimately decided. In 2016, no presidential candidate got a majority of the vote in Michigan. And here is maybe the worst example of a non-majoritarian winner. This is the U.S. House 13th district. This was the Democratic primary in 2022. And what we saw in this election was that the winner of that Democratic primary, which was conducted using plurality voting, won that election with only 28% of the vote. A winner got only 28% of the vote, which means 72% of people voted against them, which is even worse than that graphic from before, where the purple candidate or the purple party was getting 70% of the vote and still losing the election. Here, 72% of people voted against the eventual winner. And we'll take a closer look at this example later. This has a massive psychological impact on both candidates and voters. First off, we have this spoiler effect, which I alluded to earlier. This is on the candidate side of things. So when a candidate chooses to enter a race, there are a couple things that they have to consider. First, they have to consider, do they have a legitimate shot at winning that election? And second, they need to consider that if they enter the election, what will their impact be? Now, if I'm a candidate from a third party, so not from the Democrats or the Republicans, I may not have a legitimate shot at winning the election. I may still want to enter because I have new ideas to bring to the table, or I do think that I might have a chance. But if I enter that race, what's going to be my impact? Well, what I risk with plurality voting by entering as a third party candidate is that I'm going to split the vote with my most ideologically similar opponent, letting my most ideologically different opponent winning that election. That's what people say about Ralph Nader in 2000, is that when he joined the race, he drew votes away from Al Gore, the Democrat, allowing George Bush, the Republican, to win that election. So that's the spoiler effect, and that is something that is specific to plurality voting. Also, on the voter side of things, we're told in every election that we need to vote for the lesser of two evils, right? Because in every election, there are probably only two candidates that have any legitimate shot at winning that election. And they're probably one from each of the two major political parties, Democrats and Republicans. So we're told in every election, you need to vote for the lesser of two evils because those are the only two candidates that have any shot at winning. And if you don't vote for one of the lesser of two evils, then you're wasting your vote. That's what we're told, and that can be incredibly frustrating. What if there's a candidate that you really support? You really love this third party candidate, you love their ideas, you love what they're bringing to the table, but if you vote for them, people are telling you you're wasting your vote. And what's unfortunate about plurality voting is that in many ways, you are wasting your vote by voting for a candidate that has no legitimate shot at winning the election. Because when you vote for that third party candidate who's not going to win, then your vote does not factor into the final tabulation. The race is between, it's a two-horse race between Democrats and Republicans, and it's going to be between them. So if you don't vote for the lesser of two evils among those two candidates, then your vote does not factor into the final tabulation, into the final results of that election. So looking at maybe the most pernicious element of our current voting system, or at least where the most pernicious externalities arise, is in primaries, party primaries. Looking at the graph on the left, that's showing us competitive U.S. House districts. So how many U.S. House districts, federal House districts, are competitive? And a competitive House district is one where we cannot accurately determine who's going to win in a given election. We can't say we're definitely going to get a Republican out of there. We're definitely going to get a Democrat out of there. And we see that competitive U.S. House districts are disappearing. There's only 44 that are left, which is only about 10% of the total amount of U.S. House districts. So what does it mean for a district to be non-competitive? Well, it means that we can almost guarantee that the winner of the general election will be a candidate from one of the two major parties. We're going to say we know that's a Democratic district, so we know that the general election is going to be won by a Democrat. So that means that that election is essentially determined in the party primaries. If you are in a safe Republican district, then the winner of the Republican primary is almost certainly going to win the general election. So in 90% of US House districts, the winner of the party primary is essentially guaranteed to win the general election. And in those primaries, where 90% of our elections are determined, only 10 to 20% of voters are actually participating. So in presidential election years, it's a lot higher. In midterm elections, it's a lot lower. So what this means, what we can extrapolate from this, is that 10 to 20% of voters are deciding 90% of our elections, and that's in those party primaries. And who's actually voting in those primaries? Well, it's the partisans. It's the people who are the most excited to vote for one of the two particular political parties. It's the people not necessarily on opposite ends of the political spectrum, but the people who are the most partisan, the most aligned with either the Democrats or the Republicans, therefore the most polarized voters. So within those party primaries, there is essentially no incentive to compromise. If you look at the middle of this graph with these maybe weak Democrats, weak Republicans, and independents, there's not a whole lot of votes to get there. All of the votes are with strong Republicans and strong Democratic voters. That's who's showing up in primary elections. So there's absolutely no incentive to compromise in a primary election. And if you do choose to compromise, if you do choose to reach across the aisle or try to draw votes from independents or from the other side of the political spectrum, the party is going to come in and primary you. So you are incentivized to toe the party line when you are actually in governance. Elected officials need to vote with the party because if they don't, the party's going to come in, they're going to install a candidate in your primary with somebody that is going to toe the party line, with somebody that's going to be a loyalist. They're going to put their backing behind them, their resources behind them, and they're going to get them into office. So primaries incentivize extremism, and we have 90% of elections being decided by 10 to 20% of voters. Primaries are where we get our worst results of plurality voting. Also, something that comes as a result of plurality voting, and I think we're all seeing this right now with all the attack ads and all the mailers that are coming in, our system encourages incivility. Why? Take a look at this basic political spectrum. We have a left-right political spectrum, and we have four candidates. And with our current system, the most dangerous opponent in an election is your most similar opponent. With plurality voting, where you need the most votes to win, you are fighting over a very small and very specific vote share, and that's wherever you lay on the political spectrum. So for candidate A, the person that's actually their greatest opposition is candidate B. They're the most similar, which means they're fighting over the same vote share. What we would think intuitively is that candidate A is going to be the most opposed to candidate D. They're on complete opposite sides of this thing. But with plurality voting, since you're fighting over similar vote shares, you're incentivized to attack those closest to you, differentiate yourself most from those that are closest to you, so that you can win those votes in your particular portion of the political spectrum. Taking a closer look at this particularly egregious outcome of plurality voting, where the winner was able to win with only 28% of the vote, 72% disapproval. This is Detroit. This encompasses Detroit and some of the surrounding suburbs. African Americans make up the largest demographic group in this district. The House seat had 70 years of Black representation. And we saw that 8 of the 9 candidates in this Democratic primary were Black. And so the demographic vote was split in this election, which allowed Shri Thanedar to win even though he was disapproved of by nearly 3/4 of voters. So that's just taking a look at one of the worst outcomes that we saw from plurality voting. One last thing that comes as a result of plurality voting is the disenfranchisement of voters. And I'm sorry, this doesn't look great. I need to edit that. But 62 million voters in the United States live in districts that are considered safe for the opposing political party, which means that they are voting in primaries whose winning candidates have essentially no chance at winning the general election. 62 million voters live in safe districts for the opposing political party. In Michigan, 6.3 million voters live in Michigan House districts that are safe for the opposing political party. 7.4 million Michigan voters live in Michigan Senate districts that are safe for the opposing political party. This means so many people are left out of our political process by virtue of those districts being safe for one party or the other. So a quick review over plurality voting and all of its flaws. The biggest flaw with plurality voting is that we have split majorities. This means that winners are not representative. Winners do not have to get anywhere close to majority support. Voters are disenfranchised if they live in districts that are safe for the opposing political party. Our primaries decide 90% of our elections, and our party primaries are extremely incivil. And the more similar that you are to somebody on the political spectrum in a race, the more dangerous you are, the more you're going to go after people. You're going to go after the people that are closest to you. And we see incivility being incentivized heavily with plurality voting. So I hope you agree with me by now. I hope you agreed before, but I hope you really agree now that we need a better system. And what we're proposing is ranked choice voting. Put very simply, ranked choice voting is a simple but powerful upgrade to the way that we vote. Instead of going to the ballot box and just picking one candidate that you want to win, with ranked choice voting, you are able to rank your preferences over the field of candidates, and this allows you to differentiate your preferences over the entire swath of candidates. And the winner, we'll get into this in a second about how exactly this works, the winner with ranked choice voting must receive majority support from the voting population. So I hope that you've maybe had a chance to look at how exactly ranked choice voting works, what a ballot looks like, and what the results look like. I'm going to fill out this ballot myself and talk through my thought process as I fill out a ranked choice voting ballot. And if you haven't done it, you can do it on your own right now, or you can just follow along with me as I go through it. So here we have a ranked choice voting election for the mayor of Candytown. We're going to elect which candy is going to be the mayor of Candytown. We have 5 candidates, Kit Kat, Heath, Butterfinger, Hershey's, and Skittles, and we are able to rank 5 preferences. So we are able to rank in this election every single candidate if we want to. So with ranked choice voting, I am going to choose who gets my first preference vote. Now I'm going to put Butterfinger as my first preference vote because I am a chocolate candy guy. I am a peanut butter and chocolate candy guy. So I'm going to rank Butterfinger as my first preference vote. Now, one note, if this were a plurality voting election, I would act differently right up from the get-go. If this were a plurality voting election and I thought the election was going to come down to, let's say, Kit Kat and Skittles, then I would give my vote to Kit Kat because I like chocolate candies. I really want to see Skittles lose in this election. With plurality voting, I'm incentivized to vote for that lesser of two evils. So if I thought it was going to come down to 2 particular candies, I'm going to vote for the lesser of two evils. I'm going to vote for Kit Kat. I'm going to make sure that Skittles loses. But with ranked choice voting, and we'll talk through how this works in a second, I am incentivized to vote my preferences as I have them. And I'm going to get a result no matter what that I am happy with. So I'm going to rank Butterfinger as my first preference vote, and I'm going to put Kit Kat as my second, and I'm going to go Heath in third. Now, if I were ranking this on my own, I would fill out the rest of this ballot. I would definitely put Hershey's in fourth and then Skittles in fifth. But I'm going to stop here to illustrate a point, and that's that you do not have to rank every candidate in a ranked choice voting election. Your vote is not more powerful if you rank all of the candidates. What I'm doing by leaving 2 spots blank is I'm saying that I have no difference in opinion between the remaining candidates. I have no preference between Hershey's Special Dark and Skittles. Now, if I was filling this out on my own, I would absolutely take advantage of all of the ranking spots. I have preferences about all of these candidates, so I would absolutely take advantage of all my spots, and I would rank Hershey's in fourth, Skittles in fifth to make sure Skittles has the best chance of losing. But in this case, I'm going to leave those blank and say I have no preference between the two remaining candidates. I'm going to submit my ballot, and we'll take a look at the results together. So let me make sure we stay on round one here. Okay. So what are we looking at here? We have votes from all of our previous town halls, so it's not just the people in here. We have 398 votes from previous town halls. And so what we're looking at right here is the tabulation after round one. And round one counts only first preference votes. So right now, 100 people voted Skittles as their first preference, 98 for Kit Kat, and different numbers for the rest of the candidates. Now with ranked choice voting, I mentioned this earlier, you need majority support to win the election. And we see that at the top of the screen where it says votes to win. You need 200 of 398 votes to win the election. You need majority support. Now, no candidate has yet received 200 votes, so we are not done. If one of these candidates, let's say Skittles got 220 votes, 220 first preference votes, we would have declared them the winner immediately because they got that majority requirement. That's the key of ranked choice voting is the majority requirement. But nobody got to 200, so we need to continue the process to find a majority winner. If this were plurality voting, we would stop right there. We would declare Skittles the winner, having gotten the most votes, even though they only got 100. And we can look at the rest of the field. We see that chocolate candies actually got most of the votes, but Skittles was able to get the most votes in plurality voting. We'd stop right there, declare Skittles the winner. Ranked choice voting says, no, that's not the right way to conduct elections. There's a better way to do this. There is a better way to find a winner that more people are happy with. So with ranked choice voting, very simply, we take a look at who got the fewest first preference votes. In this case, that's Butterfinger. Butterfinger got only 58 first preference votes. So what ranked choice voting does is it eliminates that candidate and it redistributes those votes. So everybody who ranked Butterfinger first is going to now have their second preference vote reassigned to the field, to whoever they voted as their second preference pick. So we'll take a look at what that looks like. So Butterfinger was eliminated, and we see that 30 people who had Butterfinger ranked number one put Kit Kat as number two. So Kit Kat picked up 30 votes. Those are coming from Butterfingers. Skittles got only 6, Hershey's Special Dark got 5, and Heath got 17. Now, this makes sense, right? Chocolate candy people will probably like other chocolate candies in second place or third place. So it makes sense that Kit Kat picked up the most of Butterfinger's second preference votes. But still, we do not have a majority winner. Kit Kat has 128. We want to see a winner get up to 200. So we need to do this process again. We need to eliminate the candidate that has the fewest votes. And in this situation, we have a tie actually between last place. So in the case of a tie, we actually do the process. We will eliminate both of the last place candidates. So if there was not a tie, we would eliminate the candidate with the fewest votes. In this case, we do have a tie. Hershey, Special Dark, and Heath both picked up 82 votes at this point. So we're going to eliminate both of them and assign their votes to those voters' next preference. And we'll take a look at what that looks like. And we see Kit Kat passing the majority requirement. Now, if somebody had ranked Butterfinger first and Heath second, and they had both of those candidates eliminated, they would then have their third preference vote reassigned to whoever that was. So it's not your second preference vote that's in play, it's your next preference vote. Your vote is always in play, even if your preferred candidate gets eliminated. So what we saw here is that we saw Hershey's and Heath both get eliminated, had their next preference votes reassigned, and we see Kit Kat passing the majority threshold with flying colors, right? Kit Kat has far surpassed the majority threshold. They got 251 votes. They only needed 200 to win. Skittles lost this election despite being in first place after round one. Skittles, the chocolate candy vote was, we could say, split in the first preference round. But with our iterative ranked choice voting process, with those instant runoffs, as they are called, we found the actual majority winner. We found a majoritarian candidate. We found the candy that most people would support as the mayor of Candytown, and that's Kit Kat with an overwhelming majority in this case. And going back to our presentation here, let's talk a little bit about ranked choice voting. We saw how it finds a majority winner. Let's talk about all of the benefits that are associated with that. First of all, taking another very basic look at what ranked choice voting does. I hope you guys are all familiar with Star Wars, but here we have on the left a two-candidate race between Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. Luke Skywalker on the left is on the light side. He's the good guys of the rebellion. We like them. Darth Vader is on the dark side. He's a Sith Lord. We don't like him. So we see in this two-candidate election, we see Luke Skywalker picking up 60% of the vote. Darth Vader only got 40%. So in this two-candidate race, we have a majority winner just by default. That's how two-candidate races work. But what if Leia, who is also on the light side, enters this race and splits the light side vote? Now we have Luke getting 35%, Leia with 25, and we have Darth Vader, a non-majoritarian candidate, winning the election with only 40% of the vote. The majority loses in this case. So we would look at Leia with plurality voting, and we would say she is spoiling this election for Luke. But with ranked choice voting, what we will do is we'll eliminate the candidate who got the fewest amount of votes, that's Leia. We'll get rid of her 25% vote share, and we'll transfer her votes to her voters' second preference vote, which presumably is going to be Luke. They're on the same team. So she's going to get eliminated. Her second preference votes will be reassigned, and we are back to a majority winner. That's what ranked choice voting does. It finds majority winners. And there are many downstream benefits of this requirement. So with ranked choice voting, candidates and elected officials must have broad appeal to win elections. It's not enough to just energize your base. It's not enough to have 20 or 30% of the voting population really support you and then have 70 or 80% really dislike you. That's not enough to win an election with ranked choice voting. With ranked choice voting, it's important that you get those second and third preference votes. We saw with Mayor of Candytown that Skittles got the most votes after round one, but the winner, the eventual winner, Kit Kat, could not have won that election without second or third preference votes from the rest of the field. You need broad support. You need to get second and third preference votes to win ranked choice voting elections when there is not a clear-cut majority winner. In which case, if somebody wins after round one with a majority, we're going to declare them the winner right away because that's what we're going for. We're going for majorities. So you need broad support, which means that candidates and elected officials are incentivized to accurately represent the feelings and the opinions and the ideology and the policy positions of their communities. When you need broad support to win an election, you are going to govern in broadly good, broad in ways that are broadly appealing. And this all is downstream of the majority requirement. When you need majorities to win, you will govern according to the preferences of those majorities. We also see another benefit of the use of ranked choice voting, and that is more people are represented. This is a chart that shows the New York City Council before and after they implemented ranked choice voting reforms. New York City is the largest city that uses ranked choice voting. And they implemented ranked choice voting in 2021. And immediately after that, we saw a massive spike in the number of women and people of color that were represented on the New York City Council. This New York City Council became much more demographically representative of the community after ranked choice voting was implemented. More women and people of color run and win with ranked choice voting. Governments better reflect their communities. And this is downstream of the majority requirement as well. When you are required to receive majority support from your community, the candidates are going to represent their communities better. They're going to look more like the communities they come from. They are going to be more ideologically aligned to the communities that they come from. This is all downstream of ranked choice voting's majority requirement. Taking another look at this chart from before, with plurality voting, remember, candidate A was most incentivized to attack candidate B and vice versa. With ranked choice voting, that incentive structure is completely flipped on its head. You need broad support to win ranked choice voting elections. And if I'm candidate A, I'm most likely to get second preference votes from candidate B. So instead of being incentivized to attack candidate B because we're going after the same vote share, I'm actually much more incentivized to cooperate with candidate B, to be friends with candidate B. And a phenomenon that we see with ranked choice voting, with places that use ranked choice voting, is something called cooperative campaigning. Candidate A will go to an event and they'll say, hey, I'm candidate A. I want to win this election. That's why I'm running in it, right? I want to govern. I think that I'm the best choice. But if you vote for me as your number one pick, because this is using ranked choice voting, if you vote for me as your number one preference, I want you to rank candidate B as your second preference. Okay, and candidate B will go to that event and they'll say the exact same thing. I want to win. I think I'm the best candidate in this election. But if you rank me number one, I want you to rank candidate A number two. This is cooperative campaigning, and this is a phenomenon that we see only with ranked choice voting, where candidates are incentivized to have broad support, to have broad appeal, to get second and third preference votes. And we see this played out in the data. Candidates in ranked choice voting elections, which is also called IRV, instant runoff voting, those are two names for the same thing. Candidates in those elections tend to substitute negative or neutral words for more positive words when they are debating. So candidates are cooperatively campaigning and they are using much more positive language because they need broad support. Again, this is all downstream of ranked choice voting's requirement that the winner get majority support. So ranked choice voting eliminates that spoiler effect that we talked about before, because now if you're a voter, you're not worried that your vote for a third party candidate is going to spoil the election for the lesser of two evils, right? So it eliminates the spoiler effect by allowing voters to vote their favorite candidate first and then put the lesser of two evils somewhere down the line. So it eliminates the spoiler effect and then it expands voter choice and voice. On the candidate side of things, we're going to see campaigns focus a lot more on policy where ranked choice voting is used. Now, why is that? That's because candidates where ranked choice voting is used are much more incentivized to be civil, to campaign cooperatively, to work together. So the only way that you can differentiate yourself from the rest of the field is on policy terms, because you need to be on good terms with the rest of the candidates. You want that broad support, second and third preference votes. The only way to differentiate yourself then with ranked choice voting is by focusing on actual policy. Where ranked choice voting is used, we saw this with New York and all the other places where it's used, we see more and more diverse candidates. So more candidates run because they're not worried about being spoilers, and more diverse candidates run because winners in elections are going to represent their communities where ranked choice voting is used. And this is the part of the presentation where I also like to stress that ranked choice voting and Rank My Vote as an organization is completely nonpartisan. Ranked choice voting empowers broadly appealing candidates from any party or candidates from no party at all. If you can get majority support, then ranked choice voting is the system for you. If you want to appeal broadly to the electorate, ranked choice voting is the system for you. This is not to make sure Democrats win every election, not to make sure Republicans win every election. It's not to make sure that Libertarians or Green Party or whatever party wins every single election. This is not for any particular party. This is for broadly appealing candidates. This is for a healthier democracy where all people's voices are represented. On the voter side of things, voters are going to see more options. There are more candidates entering the race because they're not worried about being spoilers. There are new candidates bringing new ideas with ranked choice voting, which means voters have more options to choose from. And because of ranked choice voting, where you're able to rank your preferences, you don't just get one choice among more choices. You get to express your preferences over the entire swath of candidates, which means that each vote is more meaningful. You have more choices, and you can express all of your preferences across the field of candidates. And we see this. We see people are happy, people are excited to use ranked choice voting where it is used. Where ranked choice voting is used, the cities where it is used, we see a 17% across the board increase in turnout. It's higher in some cities, much higher in some cities, and a little bit lower in other cities. But people are excited to use ranked choice voting because they have more choice and more voice. This again, all of this downstream of the majority requirement of ranked choice voting. Broadly appealing candidates, more choices, more voices. Like I mentioned before, voter turnout 17% higher where ranked choice voting is used, and voters in cities where ranked choice voting is used are more likely to discuss politics with their families, friends, or coworkers, and more likely to discuss it in a positive way because politics becomes more civil where ranked choice voting is used. Where it is used, people are extremely satisfied. Like I mentioned before, New York City is the largest city that uses ranked choice voting, and 77% of voters in New York City support maintaining its use. 88% of Utah voters are satisfied with ranked choice voting. Utah is the state that has the most cities using ranked choice voting, and 88% of them want to keep using it. 56% of Virginia Republicans prefer ranked choice voting to plurality voting. In fact, the Virginia Republicans used ranked choice voting in their 2021 primaries to choose who their candidates were going to be for the general election, and they actually used it to great success. Ranked choice voting allowed the Republicans to find broadly appealing candidates within their own party, and they actually overperformed expectations in the subsequent election because in their primary they had used a system that had delivered very popular candidates, and they did very well in the subsequent election. In the two states where ranked choice voting is used statewide, that's Alaska and Maine, 62 and 61% of voters respectively express support of ranked choice voting. It's not common in our current political atmosphere that you see such overwhelming support for any particular policy position. So to see 88% of people in Utah, 77% in New York come out in favor of maintaining a reform, maintaining a policy, it's not common that you see such overwhelming support for anything, let alone in these percentages. So people are extremely satisfied with ranked choice voting. We see that played out in the data. All of this, again, I'm stressing this over and over again, is the power of the majority requirement. All of these are downstream of that. So a quick review of ranked choice voting and how much better of a system it is to plurality voting and why we need reform so badly. Everything is downstream of the majority requirement. The majority requirement delivers us representative winners. Those representative winners have to be more accountable to their communities because they need broad support. They need second and third preference votes. This is going to increase civility. You don't want to build barriers between you and other candidates. You want to break them down. You want to campaign cooperatively. You want to build good relationships and coalitions and cooperate. So we're going to see increased civility where ranked choice voting is used. And voters are extremely excited to participate in a political process that looks like this. We see increased turnout and high voter satisfaction in all the places where ranked choice voting is used. And all of this, which is downstream of the majority requirement, leads to a much healthier democracy. So where is ranked choice voting? Where is it at right now? So I mentioned before that it is used statewide in both Maine and Alaska, but that's not the only places where it is used. It's used in other places. But looking very quickly at this, we see that 4 states and Washington, D.C. will be deciding in the upcoming election, that's in just a couple weeks, whether or not they want to use ranked choice voting. So these 4 states and Washington, D.C. have citizen-led ballot initiatives like the one that we're trying to do, where they will determine whether or not RCV is right for them. We are extremely optimistic about all of these places. In fact, Nevada has technically already passed their ranked choice voting reform, but a quirk in their constitution makes them pass it twice. It's like are you sure you want to do this? Are you really sure you want to do ranked choice voting? We're hoping that they say that they are sure again, as they already have. But we're optimistic about all 4 of these states and Washington, D.C. in the next election. Ranked choice voting is also used nationwide by 13 million voters in 60 different jurisdictions. It's used all across the country, the largest of them being New York City. But again, Utah is the state that has the most cities using ranked choice voting, delivering representative winners, delivering majoritarian winners election after election. So what is going on in Michigan? Michigan is in a different color. It says passed/awaiting. What exactly is going on in Michigan? Well, ranked choice voting is 5 for 5 in Michigan. 5 cities have passed ranked choice voting initiatives in their cities: Kalamazoo, East Lansing, Ann Arbor, Royal Oak, and Ferndale. And some of them passed with almost no campaigning. East Lansing and Royal Oak, those were both initiatives led by Rank My Vote, our organization, did basically no campaigning for these cities. Just got the signatures, got it on the ballot, and a majority of people in those 2 cities decided that ranked choice voting was right for them. In the cities where Rank My Vote did do campaigning, Kalamazoo and Ann Arbor, those ranked choice voting reforms passed overwhelmingly, far above the 50% the 50% required to pass that reform. So where there is campaigning, where people know about ranked choice voting, where people hear the kind of things that I'm talking about this evening, people are enthusiastic, people are excited, people love enacting these kinds of reforms. And Ferndale actually passed ranked choice voting in 2004. They've had ranked choice voting in their city charter, whatever it is, for 20 years now. Now, despite these 5 cities passing their reforms, actually, none of them have been able to implement them. The government in Lansing has said that ranked choice voting is not allowable given the current Michigan Constitution. Now, we disagree with this position. We think that the current Michigan Constitution absolutely allows for localities to choose which election type is best for them, but the politicians in Lansing are preventing these five cities from enacting the reforms that they have enacted. We absolutely disagree with them, and we could potentially go through the courts to try to challenge their ruling, but we have another solution that's going to get ranked choice voting across the state of Michigan and allow these cities to implement the reforms that they have already passed. So let's talk about that. We are proposing a state constitutional amendment that codifies ranked choice voting in the state of Michigan in these elections. So first, we're going to go for all statewide races. So that's Secretary of State, Attorney General, and Governor, all determined, the winner determined through ranked choice voting. We're going to mandate that those elections be conducted using ranked choice voting. Second, we're going to cover the presidential election. So whoever gets Michigan's electoral votes, that person is going to be elected, that person is going to win through ranked choice voting. We're also going to cover federal, House, and Senate, so conducted through ranked choice voting, the state legislature, so state, House, and Senate through ranked choice voting, and then last, this ties back into what I was talking about a second ago, our state constitutional amendment will allow cities to choose the election type that is best for them. So upon the passage of our constitutional amendment, those five cities will immediately be able to enact their ranked choice voting reforms. We will also open the door very clearly for other cities to pass similar voting reforms if they want to. So for the four first boxes, that's statewide races, presidential, House and Senate on both the state and federal level, ranked choice voting will be mandated. At the local level, cities will be able to choose the election type that is right for them. And what is our plan to getting to that point? So we're going for a 2026 constitutional amendment. What does the path to that look like? In 2024, right now, we need to write the thing, okay? So we need to write what our state constitutional amendment is going to look like, and there are a couple of key decisions that we need to make before we do that. So we're going to write the thing, and we're also building our base of operations. We need to get all the volunteers we can, all the help. We need to get all hands on deck so that next year we can go after 700,000 signatures across the state of Michigan. The actual number is a little bit lower than that. You don't need 700,000, but you need a slightly lower number, but you want to overcompensate in case certain signatures get canceled out. People put their signature in the wrong county, or they accidentally sign it twice. So we think that we need about 700,000 signatures to get our constitutional amendment on the ballot. So that's going to take a ton of work with canvassing and campaigning and local chapters we'll talk about in a second. Once we get those signatures, we'll get on the ballot, where at which point we will need, we think, 2.2 million votes in 2026. Now, you don't need 2.2 million votes specifically to pass it, but what you need with a state constitutional amendment is majority support. So it's going to be a yes or no vote. Do you want to implement ranked choice voting in the state of Michigan with the provisions that we put in there? And we need a majority of Michiganders to support that reform. And we think that number is going to be about 2.2 million people. That state constitutional amendment is absolutely not guaranteed. There is so much work and effort that's going to go on between now and 2026 to make this happen. By the end of this year, we need 2,000 volunteers. We want to have raised $100,000. We want 10,000 subscribers to our newsletter, and we need to do press interviews. We're going to do town halls. We're right in the middle of doing 40 town halls in 40 days, and right after the election, we're going to do 20 more town halls. So we need to keep doing that, keep doing in-person events, keep doing presentations, and with exponential growth, all of this can happen by the end of this year. And then we're going to need even more exponential growth after that to get those 700,000 signatures and to get to 2.2 million votes. There's so much work that has to be done between now and then. We need all the support that we can get. So here's a QR code. I will come back to this in a second, so no need to scan this now, but we'll come back to this in a second. This QR code will link you to all of the ways that you can get involved. The biggest ones that we're pushing, obviously, are donations and volunteering. But you can also follow us on social media and find out about our upcoming events. So I'll come back to this in a second. No need to scan it right now. A couple of the ways that you can get involved, I won't go over all of these. The biggest one that we're pushing right now is local chapters. We want people who are willing to be leaders in their cities to do canvassing, to do organizing, to talk to their communities, to talk to their neighbors, to get people excited about ranked choice voting, to educate people about ranked choice voting and do presentations in their own cities. We'll be rolling out local chapters over the next couple of weeks, and we want to, I'm not sure how many we're going for, but I think as many as we can possibly facilitate. So we are looking for leaders for these local chapters, people who are willing to take up the mantle of ranked choice voting reform in their particular city. So if you are interested in having a leadership position, if you are interested in promoting ranked choice voting in your city, we want you to reach out to us and start a local chapter in your city or get people involved with a local chapter in your city. That's a big thing that's coming up in the next couple of weeks. So if you're interested in that, please reach out to us. The other biggest thing is fundraising. A campaign like this, a statewide campaign, takes money. The biggest expense that I'll talk about is lawyers' fees. So with our state constitutional amendment, we need to pay a lawyer to make sure that it is airtight against any possible legal challenges. You can get those 700,000 signatures, you can qualify to be on the ballot. But if something is wrong about your constitutional amendment, if there's a comma out of place or a strike through or whatever, if there's any little thing wrong, it could get challenged in the courts and the entire thing could potentially be invalidated. So all the work that we do between now and 2026 could all go away if we don't have an airtight, legally reviewed constitutional amendments. We need to pay a lawyer, to pay a firm to make sure everything is perfect. And so that's the biggest fundraising expense that we have coming up. We absolutely are encouraging people to donate to our cause because that is the biggest expense coming up. And of course, there will be more down the line when we're doing campaigning. And also, there's tons of other teams that you can get involved with. There's so much work for all of these. So whatever your skill set is, whatever your interests are, there is a place for you within Rank My Vote. This is a quick summary. I won't go into all of this. You guys have heard me talk for long enough. So I want to now open the door to some questions and answers. I'll go to Melissa first, who's been looking through the chat. If Melissa has any questions that she wanted to bring up from the chat, I'll let her go to those first. And if not, we can just open the floor to some open questions.
Yeah, thanks, Christian. There were just a couple questions in the chat, and I answered them briefly from, I think both of them were from Patricia. So Patricia, if you want more details, I'll let you rephrase your question and ask that to Christian. And then if other people want it, that was all the ones from the chat.
Yeah, I guess my question was just about like filling out the ballot. The way, I could see a bunch of different ways that people could not do it correctly, and then would their ballot just be just not counted?
Yeah, thank you for that
Like if
question.
they ranked two people at the same rank.
Yeah, so yes, with any voting system, if you fill it out improperly, your ballot you are at risk of having your ballot invalidated. So with plurality voting or any voting system, with plurality voting, if you vote for two candidates, then your vote is going to be invalidated. Similarly, with ranked choice voting, there are ways that your ballot can be invalidated. So our constitutional amendment, what it'll do is it will mandate the funding for 3 years of voter education. So we're going to make sure that everybody has the resources they need to understand ranked choice voting and understand how the ranking process works. And we've seen in places where ranked choice voting is used, in places where it's used statewide or at the city level, the ballot error rate, the rate at which voters make errors and their ballots are therefore invalidated, the rate at which that occurs is statistically insignificantly different than with plurality voting. Ballots ballots that use ranked choice voting are not eliminated on account of error at a rate that is different than with plurality voting. The difference is negligible. So yes, we will make sure that there is voter education for 3 cycles of ranked choice voting elections to make sure people understand and are comfortable with its use. And we have seen where this is done in the places where ranked choice voting is used. People understand it and people are not messing up this ballots. But of course, with ranked choice voting, as with any voting system, there is the possibility of messing it up and having your ballot invalidated.
If I could add to that, Christian. Hi, everyone. Pat Zavala, Communications Director here at Rank My Vote. And I would add just that the voting machines like today would spit out your ballot. I mean, if you're voting in person or voting early, they would spit out your ballot and say, hey, there's a mistake. So just like they would today. Well, obviously, it's a little more complicated with mail-ins. but in that sort of air catching would be the same.
Yep, thank you, Pat. Thank you for that question. Melissa, did you have any other pressing questions from the chat?
No, that's it. Heidi had just asked if the ACLU could help review the proposed petition language, and I was just starting to fill that in. I think that the answer to that is that you need such specialized knowledge because it has to be completely perfect. And so we do have lawyers who are donating their time to get the draft done, but then the final review has to be done by one specific law firm that has the expertise with Michigan in particular, because you can't make any mistakes at all or we lose the entire effort.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so they might be able to help with the initial stuff, but we still have to pay the lawyers.
Yep, exactly. Thank you, Melissa. That's exactly right. Yep, it is this one specific law firm with the expertise, so we need to pay them specifically. Yes, Kate.
Hello. I guess my quick question would be, how does party endorsements work under this new system, or is that completely up to each party to determine their new system?
That's a good question. So party endorsements, like which candidate the party supports, that's still perfectly allowed with ranked choice voting. Parties can endorse whomever they want in an election. And with ranked choice voting, candidates can absolutely maintain their party labels. So there will still be party affiliations, there will still be political parties with ranked choice voting.
Yeah, no, I understood that, but so are you saying that it's then up to each of the parties to determine then how their affiliation system would work because the primary system would be changing?
Yes. Okay. So yeah, you touched on that a little bit. The primaries are where it gets complicated. So yes, the primary system will be changing regardless of what our reform is. And one of the biggest things that we need to decide with our constitutional amendment is how exactly we change the primaries. There are two potential ranked choice voting reforms that we can go with. The first of them is we maintain how primaries are conducted right now. So we have partisan primaries in Michigan. They're called open primaries, but they're not really open. You choose which party's primary you want to vote in, and then you can vote only within that party. So one of our ranked choice voting reforms is that we maintain that partisan primary system, but we mandate that it be conducted using ranked choice voting. So if you use the state primary, we keep it as a closed primary, but within that closed primary, you are participating in ranked choice voting elections. The other version, and then, excuse me, after that partisan primary, the winning candidates will move on to a general election, which is also conducted with ranked choice voting. The other variety of ranked choice voting reform, the other flavor, is the open primary, and this is what Alaska uses. And that's where we just completely ditch this partisan primary system and we allow all the candidates, regardless of party, to be on one ballot. And then we conduct that election where each voter gets one choice, and the top 5 vote getters in the open primary move on to a ranked choice voting general election. So in both of these cases, parties can absolutely choose who they want to endorse in the races. There are still party labels, even with the open primary system, candidates are able to maintain their party labels, but those are the two different flavors of ranked choice voting reforms, and we need to decide which one is best for Michigan and which one has the best chance of winning, because both of them are massive steps in the right direction. Both of them are massive institutional reforms that will solve so many of the problems with plurality voting. So we need to decide which one we're going to go with, and more importantly, which one can win.
All right, thank you. That was one of my big questions.
Of course, thank you. Any other questions?
Christian, there was a question in the chat about if this presentation will be shared.
So we're not giving out like freely, but if you want to reach out to me after the presentation and maybe you have an interest in presenting at some community event, or you have an interest in starting up a local chapter and giving this presentation in the future, you are welcome to reach out to me, and I can put or maybe Pat or Melissa can put their contact information in the chat, and you can reach out to one of us and we can have a conversation about sharing the presentation if you want to give this speech to others.
And I think also there was some interest in knowing how to schedule someone from the Speakers Bureau to talk to a group.
Yes, the same thing. I'll put my contact info in the chat, and then you can reach out directly to me. We have people reaching out to us every day about presenting at events and in their communities. So I will put my contact information in the chat. You can reach out to me and
I put speakers at rankmyvote.org in the chat if that's
that's
visible.
perfect.
Sometimes
That'll go to all of us. Yep.
I want to confirm that it's there though, because sometimes it just goes to one person. It doesn't get to the whole group chat.
I will also put just mine in the chat. But if you email speakers@rankmyvote.org, it should go to everybody in the Speakers Bureau and we'll come out to you to give the presentation.
I had a couple of questions.
Please.
First, great presentation, Christian and team. And really well done. One of my questions is about potential objections. I want to try to convince people of supporting this, but I want to be prepared for potential objections that they have. So what are the like common things that people say? I know like, oh, it's confusing. That's, I've heard that one. I'm just curious what you have heard as far as objections or criticisms.
Sure. So there's a lot of different elements of objections. I would say different varying levels of complexity as well. So I think maybe one of the most common ones you'll hear is that it's confusing, or that people don't understand it, or that there's this high ballot error rate, that people are making mistakes when they fill out ranked choice voting elections. And the data just show that this is completely incorrect. When we have this voter education and in the places where ranked choice voting is used, there is overwhelming evidence that shows that people understand it, that people enjoy it, that more people show up in ranked choice voting elections. So the idea that it is confusing or hard to understand is unequivocally rejected by the data. There are also what I would call maybe the wonkier objections to ranked choice voting, which you will hear less commonly, but are maybe slightly harder to rebut. One of the ones that I've come across is that ranked choice voting does not guarantee a Condorcet winner. And a Condorcet winner is the candidate in an election that will beat all of the other candidates in a hypothetical one-on-one election. So if I'm a candidate that would beat all of the rest of the candidates in a one-on-one election, then I would be the Condorcet winner. Ranked choice voting, there are some very specific instances, and it's only happened in I just looked it up today. 0.4% of ranked choice voting elections do not deliver this Condorcet winner, because there are quirks with the tabulation process. There is a very small possibility that the Condorcet winner does not win the election. So the ranked choice voting will almost always deliver a Condorcet winner, and it will always deliver a broadly appealing candidate, regardless of whether or not they are the Condorcet winner. And there's a lot of debate about whether or not this like Condorcet criteria should be the thing that we're striving for in elections, or if it's just one element among many when it comes to choosing which electoral reform is the best. Like it's so easy to get bogged down in these little things, and the biggest thing that you always need to come back to is that ranked choice voting is an electoral reform that is simple, easy to understand, is going to fix so many of the problems that we see with plurality voting, and that guarantees a majoritarian winner in every single election. So it's always important to kind of come back to that when you get bogged down in the weeds of that thing.
Sure. Yeah, interesting. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, my second question was about the chapters that you mentioned. How do I know what chapters exist currently?
So currently, no chapters exist.
Oh, okay.
That's what we'll be rolling out in the next couple of weeks,
Okay.
And so like if you want to be a leader, absolutely reach out to us, and we will try to set up a local chapter where you are with you involved. We are rolling that out in the next couple of weeks. We'll be in probably all of the biggest cities to start, and then across the state over the next couple of months. And that's where the real work is going to happen. That's where people are going to be getting the signatures and presenting to their local communities and knocking on doors. So that's where the real work is going to happen, and we're really excited to roll that out. But right now, there are no local chapters.
Got it. Cool.
If I could add to both of those, that's okay. But Aaron, for sure, but your help is needed, and anyone's volunteers help needed in any other areas before then, for sure. So you can email us, or I'll reach out to you personally, and I'll reach out to you personally also around a Q&A document that I wrote about the first thing you said. The first thing you said just about like people's opposition, and it's a lot of it is one, like suspicion that we're working for a party or a specific cause, or two, that we will hurt their party or their cause. And certainly the parties think that. And I felt likewise when I joined Rank My Vote. So Rank My Vote was formed, volunteers started it. Like we have, we are all nonpartisan and we are volunteers who are passionate. Like it started by volunteers who got together after the anti-gerrymandering effort passed in 2018, who were working on that. And we're like, we can do ranked choice voting next. It's the next reform to do it. And I was not part of that group, but I joined as in the first town hall series. That happened pre-COVID actually. And when our website didn't have any people on it, I was like, oh, this is a dark money group. So that's kind of like the suspicion that a lot of people have in sort of just like, who is working on this? But it's hard to emphasize that we have no paid staff and we are literally all volunteers. Have made, and just through everyone's grassroots support, that's how we have a whole speakers team and communication team and tech team and are building out these chapters. Just want to rebut that, but I'll send you like a Q&A document that I just finished like during this call about like our history and things going on and how to answer some of those.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, thanks for the info.
Awesome. Thank you, Pat. All right. Any last questions before we wrap up here? If there was something in the chat, Melissa, I can't see it from my current view, but
there are a couple questions that just popped up there in the
Sure.
chat. Maybe Lauren, do you just want to ask yours, and then Heidi, and then Patricia?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yep, thanks.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm explaining this right, but my question is, in my mind, say I live in an area that's highly one party. There's more, in general. And so wouldn't that party automatically get more rank votes, in first and second place? So my vote's just going to be down there at the bottom. Is there a way rank voting solves that problem? Do you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah, I think I understand what you're asking. And yes, so we have these areas that are right now safe for one or the other political party. And even with ranked choice voting, you may always get a Republican winning in safe Republican districts. You may always get a Democrat winning in safe Democratic districts. That's kind of just the nature of living in a place where 70 to 80% of people agree. But with ranked choice voting, your vote, you may vote first for a political party that doesn't have much of a shot at winning, but the idea is that now your second preference vote can be applied to the remaining field of candidates, and your third preference vote can be applied to the remaining field of candidates. And so what ranked choice voting does is it takes those people who were before disenfranchised, who had no say in who the elected official coming out of their district was. Now they are able to kind of pull away from that partisanship. They're able, the idea that I'm getting at here is that the winners are going to be more moderate in those districts, because instead of just coming from one particular political party, people from the opposing political party who were disenfranchised completely before now kind of have a say in who's coming out of the other political party. So presumably they are going to vote for the most moderate or the most centrist of the other political party, which is going to draw that district back towards the center. So in places where it's safe for one or the other political party, that might not change with ranked choice voting, but the idea is that you're going to get more moderate candidates coming out of those elections.
Okay, thank you. That does make sense, but I can see that could be a sticking point for some people to understand that.
Sure. Yeah, I agree.
But that was very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that question.
And then Christian, I don't know if you want to take it up, but there are a couple comments in there. I think just sort of commenting about, I'm going to paraphrase it myself, about all the rhetoric that we have right now around how elections are rigged and fraudulent, and just how ranked choice voting might intersect with that ideology that's around.
Sure. Yeah. So, right, there's a lot of, I guess, people sowing doubt in our election processes, and that might be the case under any voting system. Some people point to ranked choice voting and they say that the tabulation process is more convoluted and that the results take longer. One thing that's really great about Michigan and our voting systems is that our voting machines are actually already capable of counting ranked choice voting ballots. So they already have the machinery, the hardware that's required to count ranked choice voting ballots. All that's required to update our system is a software update. So we just need to update our current machines and they will immediately be able to read ranked choice voting ballots. And we're going to see results just as quickly as we would see them with plurality voting. So we'll get results in the same amount of time, and the entire process will be as transparent as it is now. There will be checks at every step of the process, and there will be able, you will be able to have election workers and election watchers. The entire process will be open. The results will come back quickly. And then we will have that voter education, which will help voters at the ballot box fill out their ballot properly, and then also interpret the results as they come in, because it does look a little bit differently, as we saw with the mayor of Candytown, with that runoff system and the tabulation process and the redistribution of votes. So it does look a little bit different, but the idea is that the process will be fast, it will be simple, and there will be voter education to make sure everybody is understanding what's happening and what they're seeing. Thank you for that question. And if anybody else have any last minute questions before we end it off here? All right, we will call it there. Thank you all so much for being here this evening. I'm so excited to have presented to all of you guys. I really hope you all consider getting involved with ranked choice voting. This is a growing and exciting movement, and there is so much work to be done, and we need all hands on deck. We need people who are excited about reform, who recognize the need for change. So thank you all for being here tonight, and I hope you all have a good evening. So thank you so much. We will end it there.